Ever wonder why some men linger in her mind long after they've gone? Not the ones who chase, plead, or prove themselves, but the ones she can't fully grasp, the ones who move with quiet authority. This video will reveal the hidden principles that make you unforgettable, the strategies that turn her curiosity into obsession, and why mastering yourself is the only way to become the man she can't walk away from. You are not like the others. You do not rush to fill the empty spaces with words, with validation, with desperate proofs of affection. The ordinary man mistakes attention for power, yet she notices, unconsciously, the difference between presence that is given freely and presence that is granted selectively. You learn to dwell in the latter. Your calm is a weapon, your restraint a force she cannot measure. She senses it in every pause, every silent glance, every absence you orchestrate without effort. In your stillness, she begins to feel her own impatience, her own desire, and her own inadequacy. This is not cruelty. This is strategy, rooted in observation and refined through self-mastery. Women do not become addicted to what is predictable. They do not obsess over availability, over words spoken in haste, or over gestures that demand nothing in return. They become obsessed with what challenges them, what they cannot fully comprehend, what tests the boundaries of their understanding. You are the embodiment of this principle. You withhold, not because you wish to frustrate, but because you have mastered the deeper law. Value is created in scarcity, fascination in uncertainty. You leave gaps in perception, spaces that she cannot occupy or define, and she is drawn toward them instinctively, like a moth circling a flame it cannot reach. You understand that mastery is invisible, yet undeniable. She watches, probes, and analyzes, unaware that each attempt to understand you only deepens her fixation. Your actions, or sometimes your deliberate inactions, are lessons she cannot articulate but cannot escape. The world is littered with men who seek to impress, to prove, to dominate openly, but you operate on a subtler plane. You govern perception without announcing your control. You command attention without demanding it. In this, you are untouchable, and in this, she senses the gravity of your presence, even when it is absent. It is not the flamboyance of wealth or the theatrics of power that captivate her. She does not respond to flamboyance. She responds to the quiet consistency of principle. You demonstrate, without preaching, that your self-possession is absolute, that your choices are deliberate, that your time and attention are not commodities to be spent freely. She feels the weight of this without knowing why. And in this subtle tension, a loop forms in her mind: curiosity, desire, respect, obsession. She cannot name it. She cannot rationalize it. She only knows that she is drawn deeper with every measured word, every calculated pause, every quiet demonstration of your value. Observe her responses carefully. Notice the subtle signs: a lingering glance, an unspoken question in her eyes, a hesitation in her speech when she wonders if she has misjudged your intentions. These are not accidents. They are signals, feedback from a mind that is trying to reconcile fascination with incomprehensibility. Every interaction you engineer, every boundary you maintain, reinforces her internal narrative. You are rare, not because you are perfect, but because you are unclaimable. Obsession thrives not on perfection, but on unattainable authenticity. You do not need to rush affection or explanations. You do not need to validate her curiosity. Let it exist, grow, and twist in her mind. Let her imagine the man behind the silence, the one she cannot predict. Her imagination will always be more potent than any gift you could offer or any promise you could make. This is the quiet force of strategic restraint. You do not act to be understood, you act to be remembered. And in being remembered, in being unattainable yet present, you plant the seed of obsession that cannot be uprooted. Notice the paradox. The more you remain anchored in self-mastery and detached from her approval, the more she invests emotionally. She searches for your motivations, your intentions, your patterns, and in that search, she becomes entangled. Obsession is born, not from what is given, but from what is withheld, and you are the master of this economy. You have learned that value is perceived, not earned, and curiosity is engineered, not demanded. Every calculated absence, every silent pause, every moment in which your presence is felt but unexplained, compounds her attention. She begins to crave the intangible connection that only you, through self-mastery, provide. You do not chase. You do not plead. You do not explain. You do not give her control over your thoughts or emotions. You allow her mind to do the work for you. She theorizes, she analyzes, she projects, and in all of it, you remain untouched, unshakable, untouchable. This is the essence of Machiavellian mastery applied to desire. Create tension through selective presence, and allow her mind to bind itself to you. Your power lies not in manipulation, but in principle. You never act out of need, you act from discipline. You never reveal all, yet all is consistent. You become the anchor in a world of unpredictability, the axis around which she unconsciously rotates. Her thoughts, her emotions, her desire, they orbit you not because you insist, but because you cultivate the conditions for it: control, restraint, mystery. And in her orbit, she begins to recognize what she cannot have fully, and that recognition is the cornerstone of obsession. You move through the world with the quiet confidence of someone who knows the laws that others cannot see. You measure every pause, every glance, every word, not with arrogance but with precision. You understand that her fixation will not come from your abundance, but from your subtlety, your inaccessibility, your capacity to withhold. Every small act, a deliberate delay in answering a message, a measured gaze that lingers just long enough, a silence in response to curiosity, compounds in her mind until she cannot separate you from her thoughts. You are the axis, the constant, the unknown variable she cannot solve. This is the magnetism of restraint. The obsession you cultivate is not through coercion, but through psychological tension, through your mastery of yourself and your environment. You understand that emotion is not a currency to spend, but a lever to apply. She cannot resist the pull of a man who is present but unattainable, who is engaged yet sovereign, who is known yet unknowable. She may not admit it, may not understand it consciously, but her mind is tethered, her curiosity ensnared, her attention claimed by the invisible architecture of your discipline. She notices patterns in your behavior she cannot define. Not the overt gestures, not the obvious actions, but the subtleties, the way you allow her presence without surrendering yours, the way your silence carries meaning she cannot claim. Every interaction becomes a test she cannot consciously recognize, and she passes or fails according to standards you set unconsciously. You are the arbiter of attention, yet she believes she chooses freely. This is the paradox: power without pressure, influence without announcement. You cultivate your world with deliberate unpredictability. When she expects a reply, you pause. When she anticipates a favor, you decline or delay. These are not acts of cruelty. They are strategic calibrations. You understand that desire is strengthened not by abundance, but by challenge. In giving her everything, a man becomes ordinary. In withholding with subtle intention, he becomes indispensable. She does not see it as strategy at first. She sees it as a riddle, a puzzle she longs to solve, a gap she instinctively wants to bridge. And the more she tries, the deeper her fixation grows. Every word you choose, every glance you allow, every emotion you reveal, these are measured instruments, calibrated to provoke thought, curiosity, and longing without surrender. You operate with the precision of someone who knows the rhythm of attraction, mystery, scarcity, unpredictability, and autonomy. You recognize that obsession is not created in presence, but in the tension between presence and absence, between certainty and question, between control and surrender. Her mind begins to revolve around these spaces you carve intentionally, mapping your intentions where none are overt, projecting motives that exist only in her imagination. You allow her to chase what she cannot possess fully, but you never encourage it. You never affirm it directly. Instead, you demonstrate through your actions, your priorities, your calm detachment, that your world does not orbit her, yet she is allowed entry. This controlled tension ensures that she invests mentally and emotionally far more than you ever could directly demand. Her fixation grows because she believes it is her initiative, her curiosity, her insight, yet it is the architecture you have subtly built. Notice how she studies you in moments of shared space. She notices when you listen but do not react immediately. She notices when you speak but choose your words with the weight of intentional ambiguity. She notices when you move, when you pause, when you leave a space unfilled. In these micro-behaviors, she senses power and control. A man unshakable in his self-possession. A man whose attention is conditional on merit, yet freely offered to none. Her mind begins to trace your patterns obsessively, interpreting every pause, every word, every glance as a signal, as a message she cannot fully decrypt but cannot ignore. You understand that curiosity is a trap. The ordinary man seeks to close the loop immediately. He explains, he clarifies, he reassures. You do not. You leave loops open, unresolved, deliberate. She fills them in herself, constructing meaning, narratives, and anticipation that bind her focus to you. This is the principle. Allow her mind to work for you. She invests in understanding, in anticipation, in desire, and in all of it, she does the work while you remain unchanged, calm, sovereign. In social spaces, you act as an axis. You do not compete for attention. You command it without effort. Others notice your calm, your indifference to the petty urgencies around you, and they unconsciously elevate your status. She observes this subtly, noting not only your composure, but how it differentiates you from the predictable chaos of others. Her subconscious interprets this as competence, stability, and unshakable value. This triggers admiration first, then curiosity, then obsession. You are never overtly dominant. Dominance is inferred from consistency, mastery, and absence of need. Your life is structured around autonomy, freedom, and selective engagement. You maintain routines that anchor you, principles that govern you, and behaviors that reflect self-possession. She observes this and senses a measure of freedom she cannot claim for herself. In watching your discipline, she projects onto you desire, respect, and aspiration. This projection is not forced, it is natural. She cannot resist it because it is rooted in human instinct for what cannot be obtained at will. You also understand the power of imperfection. A man too polished, too rehearsed, too predictable invites inspection without intrigue. A man who allows for small mysteries, small contradictions, small unspoken complexities becomes compelling. She notices the minor unpredictabilities in your behavior, an unexpected compliment, a deliberate silence, an absence without explanation, and she cannot rationalize them. Her mind interprets them as signs of depth, intelligence, or hidden mastery. Her obsession grows because she cannot reduce you to a formula. Even in absence, your presence lingers. You leave traces of yourself intentionally. A well-timed gesture, a subtle message, a memory of attention given, a fleeting interaction that requires interpretation. These fragments become puzzles in her mind. She ruminates over them, analyzes their meaning, and in doing so, she recreates you continuously in thought. She believes she is solving a mystery. In truth, she is walking exactly the path you have constructed through your mastery of behavior, timing, and psychological leverage. You never act from fear, from desire, or from need. All action is deliberate. All presence is measured. You do not seek her approval. You do not seek her attention. And paradoxically, it is this detachment that draws her closer. Human psychology is drawn to what is unattainable yet within reach, what is predictable yet unknowable, what is present yet untouched. You are all of these things. She senses it instinctively, even if she cannot name it, and in that tension, her obsession takes root and flourishes. You are a master of subtle escalation. Every interaction builds layers: curiosity, admiration, respect, desire, and longing. She begins to anticipate your behavior, yet can never fully predict it. Every pause, every measured response, every absence is a signal. Deliberate, invisible, effective. Her mind begins to orbit you, crafting narratives, projecting motives, calculating possibilities, tracing the contours of a man who is always in control of himself, always sovereign over attention, always strategically present. Obsession is no longer incidental, it is inevitable. And here is the final principle embedded in this phase. You are untouchable not by force, but by principle. She cannot manipulate, cannot bend, cannot own you. She can only experience your presence as a gravitational pull she cannot resist, a tension she cannot solve, and a mystery she cannot escape. She becomes enthralled, fascinated, and unable to let go because in your calculated restraint, your mastery of self, and your orchestration of presence and absence, you have constructed an emotional architecture that ensures she cannot and will not forget you. There comes a moment when she realizes something unsettling. She has changed, quietly and gradually, without permission. And the axis of that change is you. Not because you demanded anything, not because you chased, begged, or justified, but because your presence and your precise use of absence rewired the way she sees connection. She begins to recognize that the stability you possess exists nowhere else in her life. Others speak loudly, react impulsively, and reveal themselves without thought. You do the opposite. You act with intention, speak with purpose, and withdraw with confidence. She senses this as safety and danger simultaneously, and that duality binds her to you in ways she cannot admit aloud. By now, her mind has formed a private world around you. A world shaped by expectation, tension, admiration, and questions she cannot settle. You never force your value onto her. She elevates you herself. That elevation is the mark of a man who holds tactical silence as a blade and composure as a shield. Every time you refuse to be shaken by emotion or provoked by impulsiveness, she sees a man who has mastered himself. And the mind of a woman cannot detach from a man who governs his own inner kingdom with such precision. Your influence deepens not through dominance, but through the contrast you represent. Other men crumble under pressure. You become more still. Others seek validation. You seek alignment. Others react. You assess. In you, she encounters a rare certainty, the presence of a man guided by principle rather than impulse. The certainty unsettles her at first. Then it pulls her closer. Her subconscious interprets your steadiness as strength, as competence, as truth. And she begins to anchor her emotional world around your behavior, even when she doesn't intend to. You know the subtle art of emotional calibration. You are neither cold nor overly generous. You offer warmth in precise doses, enough to intrigue, never enough to be owned. Your presence is a calculated equilibrium, approachable, yet sovereign, inviting, yet controlled. She feels safe with you, but never fully satisfied. This is not an accident, it is psychological design. It creates emotional velocity, a cycle of longing, fulfillment, and renewed longing. Through this rhythm, she invests herself deeper than she expected, deeper than she wanted, deeper than she understands. She begins to test you quietly, a delayed response, a subtle provocation, a moment of distance to see if you'll chase. And you do what separate men never do, nothing. You don't react. You don't collapse under insecurity. You don't defend your worth. You maintain your axis. And in that moment, she sees the truth. You are not moved by her attempts to gain leverage. That realization does something irreversible. It removes the illusion of control she thought she had. Now she feels the imbalance, and her attraction sharpens into something far stronger, dependence on your emotional gravity. You do not boast about your standards, you embody them. You don't explain your discipline, you live it. She watches the consistency of your actions, the restraint in your decisions, the direction in your life, and she sees a rare form of power. Not explosive, but anchored. Not loud, but sovereign. She recognizes that she cannot shake you, cannot predict you, cannot influence you the way she can with others. Your refusal to be swayed by approval or affection makes you unforgettable. And in that unforgettable nature, obsession grows. Her emotional world reorganizes itself around your rhythm. She begins anticipating your attention. She replays your words. She analyzes your silences. She studies your choices. She watches for patterns that aren't there. The more she searches, the more elusive you become. Not because you hide, but because you reveal only what you choose. You maintain a boundary that is both respectful and immovable. This boundary communicates something deeper than affection. You belong to yourself first. And that principle alone elevates your presence beyond anything she has experienced. Women do not forget the man who refuses to be owned. The man who walks through the world with quiet intention. The man who exerts control over himself before exerting influence over others. And as she observes this, she realizes something transformative. You do not need her, yet you value her presence. That distinction is the root of her fixation. Needing creates pressure. Valuing creates mystery. You have mastered this distinction, and she feels its weight every time you speak with precision, every time you choose silence, every time you let the moment breathe without filling it. You also understand timing, the invisible architecture of influence. When she grows too comfortable, you shift slightly. When she grows distant, you remain unmoved. When she grows emotional, you remain steady. This constancy separates you from men who react to her storms with their own. You do not mirror chaos, you neutralize it. And in that neutralization, she experiences a form of emotional stability she cannot replicate elsewhere. That stability becomes addictive. She begins to seek your presence not just for connection, but for the equilibrium she cannot find alone. She imagines conversations that never happened. She replays moments you've already forgotten. She constructs meanings behind gestures you didn't think twice about. This is not manipulation, it is psychology. When a man refuses to validate himself through a woman, she begins validating the connection herself. And in doing so, she binds her emotions, her imagination, her attention to you without your slightest effort. You navigate her emotions with quiet strategy, not force. You do not assert dominance, you embody sovereignty. You do not demand loyalty, you inspire it. You do not chase significance, you radiate it. She sees your restraint, your silence, your measured vulnerability, and she feels the weight of a man who chooses what he reveals rather than spilling himself recklessly. This intentionality makes you unforgettable, and that unforgettable nature evolves into a psychological imprint she cannot undo. Eventually, she reaches the realization that cements everything. You are irreplaceable not because of what you give, but because of what you refuse to give away cheaply. Your attention remains selective. Your emotions remain disciplined. Your presence remains purposeful. She senses the depth behind your composure, the layers she has only glimpsed. And in those glimpses, she sees a man who is both mirror and mystery. And here the final truth settles in her mind, quietly and irrevocably. You are not just a man she desires. You are the man she measures every other man against. This is the finale of mastery, not conquest, not control, but becoming the silent standard she carries forever.